It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Chazan David Aptowitzer. We're here in your beautiful apartment in Protea Hills in Shoresh, and it is such an honor and a privilege to be with you today. And David, if you can mention, you wrote this incredible book, A Courage to Survive. It's a Holocaust memoir of yourself and your dear wife. If you could just mention a little bit about where you grew up in Poland and a little bit about your family. You had a very special family and a very special...
You have everything here too.
I know, but it would be wonderful just to hear you speak about just a little bit what you remember about Poland and Tarnopol, where you grew up.
Yeah.
So how many were in your family?
We were 7 children, and none of them survived. When Hitler came in, my sister and my sister came over to me and says, "Do you want to come with us?" She was married at that time, and we are going inside Russia. Would you want to come with us? I says, yes, I'll go. And that was actually saved my life.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 16.
16, wow. And David, can you just mention a little bit about your parents, Chaya and Yitzchak, growing up in Tarnopol?
Yeah.
You had a very good life. You had a...
Yes, I was. I was born with in a wonderful religious family, and my father geared me in the Jewish life. And I studied a little in a yeshiva before also, and then until Hitler was coming close to Tarnopol. So my sister came over to me, and she says, I'm leaving Poland. He says, if you want to come with me or with us, with her husband, and so I said, yes, I'll go. And I was 16 years old, and then she said, and I said, this actually saved my life.
And your sister was Bronya?
Bronya.
And you have pictures in your book of your father?
Yeah.
Your father was, can see, very religious.
Yes, yeah.
And he was he made boots.
Yes. He was a very, very talented man. He was, he created a booth, one of the shoes, and nobody could ever copy what he did. He was a very talented man. He created a booth, one of the booths, and that he says it was created. That booth was created without any kind of stitches around, from from the beginning till the end, and the carpet, the inside that you make it a booth was taken out very, very magically, and he sent it before the war. There was a thing that they were trying to show what he could do, and anyway, the war finished it. Any questions?
Yes. So you had a brother Hirsch, and I'm going to just show the picture.
Yes.
A brother Hirsch and your sister Hannah, and another sister Esther. And were you the youngest of your?
I was the youngest of 7 children.
And let me just ask, you went to a cheder, a Jewish cheder?
Sure.
And do you remember, you speak about it in your book, on Shabbos that your mother would make from... Shabbos was a very important part in your family.
Definitely.
She would start preparing for the Shabbos meal. And what do you remember about Shabbos in the shul? And
let me tell you, I was I had a nice voice when I was a small boy, and then they came, the chazan from the shul, from the big shul, came to interview some students for the choir in the old shul, and I was luckily chosen to be one of the choir members, which was in the old shul. The old shul was a famous shul. It was built in the 17th, and
this was the main shul of Tanapal.
Yeah.
And you used to daven with your father in a shtibel, in a small...
First certainly, and until I was chosen to go to sing in the big shul.
And they had famous chazonim in the big shul?
Yes, we did. We had, well, certainly, Kosovitsky came a few times to just to daven with in the shul, and I had the privilege to sing in the choir. And I remember Sirota came to daven in shul in Tarnopol, and I had the privilege to sing with him in the shul. And I remember singing one of the duets with Sirota when he came for it. Would you remember? Yeah, I sang with Sirota the famous V'tachazana Einenu V'shuvecha Letzion B'shuvecha Letzion Barachamim. That was one of the highlights of my life, to be able to sing with Sirota on a Shabbat. He came, yeah, he was invited for Shabbat. And then there were some other also chazanim that would come occasionally to shul, and we were I was lucky to be able to sing with Sirota. There was another chazan that came from England, from Belgium, that he came just before the war. He was hired to our old shul, and but unfortunately he was caught into the war, and he was annihilated. And what other?
And David, was your father also? Did he used to have a beautiful voice? Could
That's
he also?
what it is. My father had a beautiful voice, but he was not a professional chazan. But all the chazanas that my father had and he gave it to me, is it because I was singing with him, and then I was singing with in the old shul, and it was the greatest pleasure to sing in the old shul with.
And any of your brothers, did they also have were they also gifted with a good voice?
No, my one of my brothers that passed away already here in Israel, he had a nice voice, but he was more in acting than just singing, and otherwise we had a nice family.
And growing up, did you ever have any anti-Semitism, or from the Polish children? Did they ever?
Oh yes. Especially before the war.
You could feel it.
You could feel it. It was coming. Yes. There were the Szkocem, the Polish Szkocem that used to always started to laugh about Jews, about Jewish children, Jewish friends, and so on. We had not a very friendly life before the war.
Did you have non-Jewish neighbors?
Yes, a lot. We had a lot of non-Jewish neighbors, and they were very, very anti-Semitic and very, very unfriendly.
You could feel this even.
Oh yes, especially when the war was coming closer. Well, then we felt it more and more.
And can I just ask, when your sister Bronya and her husband, when they wanted you to come with them, your parents agreed? Because it must have been a very difficult decision to...
My sister comes over with her husband, and just before the war, she says, "Look, I'm going further into Russia."
But her husband was Shmuel.
Pardon?
Her husband was Shmuel.
Yeah. He says, would you like to go with us? I didn't know what's all about, and these 6 words that she said, "Would you like to come with us?" saved my life.
And you said goodbye to your parents and to your...
I said goodbye, and that's
family.
it.
And you never saw them again?
That's it.
You know what happened to your parents?
I left, and as we know, they were annihilated by the Germans as soon as they came in.
And David, can I ask, when you went with your sister, they decided to go to I think he worked for the railways, Shmuel.
Yeah.
So they decided to go more inland into Russia.
That's what he was working for the railway, her husband. And this what saved us. He says, we're going away. You want to come with us? And I said goodbye to my parents, and that was it.
And you went to a town called Balashov.
Yes.
You remember?
Very much.
And I think there was a non-Jewish Polish family that took you in.
That took yeah. She is a Polish family from the First World War that lived there, and we came to Russia, and I was very, very good with my hands, and so I went to work for the railway also, and I learned very fast the trade of shaving the wheels, shaving the wheels of the wheels of the train, and I was very lucky to be able to do it, and I was very successful.
And your sister was pregnant at this time?
That's right, with her daughter.
But I think they sent Shmuel away.
Yeah, they took him to the army also.
And here we have a picture of your dear sister, Bronya and
Sarah.
And Sarah. So how was it like being in a foreign, in the middle of Russia? Was it difficult? You couldn't keep kosher anymore. It must have been very...
Didn't even know what kosher is. But I was integrated there with the Russians in Balashov there, and I worked on the train, and I learned how to shave up the wheels of the train. It was a very wonderful trait to be able to learn, to be able to do, and I became a very famous in Russia, which they called a Stakhanovets. A Stakhanovets is a very distinguished worker that learned to do in no time. I learned how to shave the wheels of the trains and the locomotives.
And did people know that you were Jewish, or at this time?
Oh yes, at that time they didn't.
But it didn't make a difference?
It didn't make a difference.
You didn't feel in Russia there was this terrible anti-Semitism?
Not at that time. Not at that time when we became, and the war was involved. It was there. So we didn't feel any anti-Semitism at that time at all.
And then I think you were called up, or you had to then go to Saratov.
Saratov was a big city, and I left my sister.
Why did you leave? You had to leave?
I was drafted.
You were drafted?
I was drafted. I was 17 years old.
And you wanted to join the Polish?
the Polish army was not existed yet. It was later on when they established a Polish army in Russia, of whom of former Polish citizens that ran away before, and then they established a Polish army in Russia, and I was drafted. Actually, I was not drafted. I was drafted to the Russian army, but I asked them when they established the Polish army if I could become a member of the Polish army, because thinking maybe very near future when the Russians will beat back the Germans and people will have the opportunity to go back maybe to Poland, and I was thinking perhaps I'll find my parents alive and so on, which was just a dream. And
David, can I ask, at this time, did you have any connection, any letters or any communication, or did you hear anything about your parents or your family back in Poland?
I couldn't.
There was no connection, nothing. When you said goodbye, and
I
you
said
left with your
goodbye,
sister,
that was a goodbye for good.
and you never ever heard again? No.
It was finished.
That must have been incredibly difficult, incredibly.
Thinking now, they took me to the Russian army in early 17, and thinking maybe if we'll have an opportunity the Russians will beat back the Germans, so maybe I will have an opportunity to see any of my parents. But that was just a dream.
And you were fluent in Russian? You could speak Russian?
Oh yes,
You learned it very quickly?
Russian and Polish and German I spoke, and this helped me a lot in the Polish army when the Polish army was organized. It helped me a lot knowing different languages. I was able to translate from Russian to Polish to German.
And I just want to ask you, your brother-in-law, Shmuel, he was, I don't know if you pronounce the word, a gonitz. He was a runner for the railways.
Right. And in those days, they didn't have the communication that I had, television and this. So he was working for the railway, and he was what was a runner. He was going to wake up the Russians to come to
So David, do you remember when your sister gave birth to her baby?
Would you believe it that I remember like it happened just now? She was pregnant, and we came to Russia, and we settled in the city of Balashov, and my brother-in-law was working at the railway station, and she was pregnant at that time. I didn't, and I was there when the baby was born on January the 1st, I think, 42. The baby, and I was there, and it's a funny thing. Where we lived with a family whose lady was Polish from the First World War, and she settled in Balashov, and I happened to when we left Poland, I happened to fall into her family. She spoke Polish, and I spoke Polish, and she was her husband was what do you call the
like a midwife, a male midwife?
Midwife. Her husband, yeah. Her husband was a midwife.
Their name was Zuckerkandel.
Zuckerkandel. Ah, good, very good.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they helped deliver the baby.
Yeah.
And Shmuel, he was he
was away. Yeah.
Wow.
And she Mrs. Zuckerkandel, who was we ran away together from Poland to Russia, and she helped with delivering the baby, and also the person whom we lived there, he was an accoucheur who helped deliver babies in Russia.
A male midwife.
A midwife.
It's amazing. And then very soon after, they called Sarah or Sonia.
Yeah.
Her Hebrew name was Sarah. This
Sarah.
is the baby, and this is your niece. I will just show the picture again of your sister and your niece, her baby Sarah. And then soon after that, Shmuel was called up.
Shmuel was called up to the
army, to the working battalion.
To the army, and he wanted very, very much to come back home, but he was drafted, and I think what he did, he cut off three fingers. He cut off by thinking maybe this will help him to get back home to his wife. And instead of it, they put him to jail. Shmuel.
And you were very close. You were close with Shmuel. You got on.
Yeah,
you got on very well.
Because we all ran away together from home. We ran away.
And how long did he stay in the prison?
He stayed for a long time because we didn't see him for a long time, because he cut the three fingers thinking be able to come home. Instead of, they took him to prison.
So it was very hard, because you also were called up into the army.
Yeah, later, yes.
And you needed a passport, a Russian passport, but you were Polish. So that was also difficult.
There was a whole business there with the passports in Russia.
But you know, they because you were such a good worker, I think they said they were going to send you to Saratov, and that's when they sent you to Saratov.
Yeah.
But your sister Branya had stayed behind with the baby
in Balashov. Yeah.
So it was very hard for you to leave your sister, but you had no option. You had to go.
I had to go.
And what do you remember about Saratov? It's a big city on the Volga River.
Yes. Yes. When I came to Saratov, it's a very, very big city, and so instead of drafting me to the army, they sent me to work on the
with salt.
With salt at the Volga River, and I worked for a little while. I couldn't work heavy. I was very, very thin. I couldn't work heavy work, so I was asked to relieve me if they could send me to something else to work with my hands, which I am very good with my hands, but I couldn't work with the salt to carry sacks of salt from the big places that they used to. They made me carry salt sacks and then I was very thin, and I went and I asked them if they wouldn't mind to give me another job, because this is very, very, very difficult for me. Which they did. They let me, and then it was a whole history later on.
You were put in a you were in a barracks with other workers.
Certainly.
And they were, but very few of them were Jewish. They came from all different countries.
Yes.
And then you actually got a visa. You got your passport. They issued you a Russian passport.
Yeah. I did. I manipulated, and here and there I got one finally.
And you'd occasionally meet like a Russian soldier, and you'd hear about when are the Yontevim, but it was very difficult to practice. You couldn't practice anything.
I didn't know when is Yontev, when is not.
And then your brother-in-law Shmuel, he was then he was in the prison at this time, and you tried to go see him.
I tried to go to see him. I tried to bring him a loaf of bread.
I think you gave it to the guards, and
they gave it to the guards. They never delivered it to him. He never got it.
And what happened to your brother-in-law? What happened to Shmuel?
Shmuel was taken to army and to working battalion here and there, and he was separated from my sitter for quite a long time, and I was helping out as much as I could at my age, and I didn't meet him until after the war. Shmuel.
And then you managed to. How did you manage to join the Polish army?
When I was taken to the Russian army, at the same time, the Polish garnison, whatever it is, was they try to make to have an army. So I asked if I could, since I speak Polish and I speak Russian, could I be transferred to the Polish army there, and they did.
And here is a picture of you, a very handsome young man in the Polish army uniform.
Yeah.
And then you met a friend of yours, Shmuel Perlmutter.
Yes. Shmuel Perlmutter, yeah. We were both drafted to the Polish army. Perlmutter. He was also from Poland.
And you became very close friends.
And we became good friends, and then we stayed in the Polish garrison, the Polish army, very close together. And then we worked together also in the Polish army, and especially me being Jewish, the Polacks trusted the Jews much more than the Polish soldiers. So I was transferred to a group where I have worked for the Polacks, them knowing that I am Jewish, and they have trusted me with many things, more as a Polish Jew than they would trust the Polacks there. And I stayed there till after the war.
And can I just ask, because this is very amazing, in the spring of 1944, in the spring of 1944, during your basic training in Zhytomyr, your platoon marched along the sidewalk, and this must have been very hard what you saw.
That was something unbelievable, because I was there already in the Polish army, and then we were in the city of Zhytomyr, and we were put in groups to walk on the street, and there we are in Zhytomyr on. We were parading a group of soldiers, and I look down and I see Jewish letters, Jewish things, and I realized that the Germans used used some of the
The gravestones.
that is great, yeah, great stuff, and they made
From the Kforim, from the Jewish Kforim. They used the tombstones.
We were walking on tombstones.
It must have been so difficult. And during this time, had you heard about the terrible atrocities that the Germans and Hitler had done?
No.
You hadn't heard?
For a long time, we haven't heard until we went into Poland. Actually, into Poland, when we came back with the Russian army, we came back to Poland, and I went in, and the first time I confronted a concentration camp, Majdanek.
But before that, you actually went to Kiev.
Yes.
And in Kiev, there's also, you have Babi Yar.
That's another story.
That was before you went into Poland.
Yes. From Kiev, we went to Poland.
David, I know this is difficult, but what happened when you went to Kiev? Because Babi Yar is a suburb of Kiev.
Yeah, it is in Kiev.
I was there.
And I came in there, and then the Russians there started to tell me story about the Babi Yar, about the mountain of people that were killed, and the earth was still shattering because they were killing in Kiev alone. They killed thousands of Jews. They killed, and that's what I found out first about the Babi Yar.
Did you go to Babi Yar?
I didn't have an opportunity of going, but I was not far from it. I was not far from it.
And how was your reaction when you heard this news? It must have been unbelievable to hear.
It's unbelievable.
Could you believe such a thing?
You could think you're getting crazy when you heard stories like this. It's terrible.
And then David, from there, it was Min HaShamayim that you were in the Polish army, because you were able to
go back and to see and to see some of the things.
And I think the NKVD, which was the KGB afterwards, they interviewed you and they allowed you to go.
Yes, they gave me permission to help them, because I knew Polish, I knew German, I knew certainly Yiddish and so on. They helped me. They helped me to see, especially to go into Majdanek.
I just want to show before. Here's a picture with you and your very good friend Shmuel Perlmutter. And before you went to Majdanek, you went to the city of Chelm.
Yes.
And in Chelm you received orders to send papers to Lublin. And Lublin, we know that's where we have Chochmei Lublin, and that's Reb Meir Shapiro.
Yes.
We have the. You had heard of Reb Meir Shapiro? You had heard of Reb Meir Shapiro?
Yes,
and
yes.
You knew about
yes, sure.
Chachmei Lublin and
Chachmei Lublin.
And Lublin, when you went there, had just been liberated 2 days before. So you were one of the very first
Yes.
foreign, well, to come back into Lublin. How was it like going into Lublin? Because it was once a very big Jewish city as well.
Certainly, yes.
It was a major Jewish city.
A city of learning, Lublin. And I came back, a lot of people were in hiding, and they were coming back also from hiding to tell stories what happens, what it's, you know, when we start thinking back, it's like you're getting crazy to be able to absorb what the people were saying, and then what we saw ourselves.
So they told you about Majdanek, which is a suburb of Lublin.
Certainly.
It's really a suburb of Lublin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
David, you went as a Polish soldier. You went to Majdanek.
Majdanek, yes.
Did you have any idea what was you were going to see?
Not a thing. Not, I think I didn't know what a concentration camp is until I came in to Majdanek. It was unbelievable to see corpses lying on the floor, which they were not, the Germans were not able to wash away their story, and it was unbelievable to see Majdanek, to come in to see corpses that they were not still able to bury, and the ovens were still open, and people were not be able to bury the people. They were just there, and it was very horrible.
And you saw the gas chamber?
Oh, certainly. While I was there, I saw them, and I saw corpses still. They were waiting to be put in to burn,
The gas chamber.
and they were still there.
So you were one of the very first people to actually go into Majdanek.
Majdanek, yeah.
The Germans ran away before they could destroy the evidence, the atrocities, the terrible atrocities.
Everything was in front of us. All the bodies, the chambers were almost still lying there. We couldn't burn them.
Were there any Yidden that were still alive in Majdanek?
No. But there were some Jews that came back from hiding, which is close from Majdanek. They came back and they started telling stories. And it was horrific stories. What can we do?
And David, can I ask you, when you saw, I mean, I was in Majdanek, and I think it's the worst place on earth.
When were you there?
About 3 years ago.
Oh,
And it was still the same. They haven't changed it. It's exactly the same today as it was then.
yeah.
The same. They haven't changed anything. And you go there and it's inconceivable to think, but you were there before.
I was there.
You were there from the very when it was just straight off 2 days after the Germans had left.
Yeah. And I didn't know what a Majdanek or a concentration camp was until I saw.
When you saw the crematorium and when you saw the
Everything in front of me. And the smell, terrible.
so these images must have haunted you forever. Once you see something like this,
Certainly. I try to forget. It's not easy, but things like this you don't forget so fast.
and David, which we found very hard, is the people living in Lublin, the Poles they were living. It's really a suburb of Lublin.
Certainly.
You see this. You walk out of Majdanek and you see Lublin right, and they let it happen, and it was so close by. It was
Yeah.
so, no one could have said they didn't know because the chimneys were burning and
Certainly.
the smell and the screams. And is that the worst images you've ever seen? You can't see worse than that.
To get into an image of a concentration camp, this is the worst thing you would want to see.
And how long did you stay in Majdanek?
Where?
When you went to Majdanek, how long were you there for?
Oh, well, I was there a few days, and but I couldn't take it. It was hard to take, to see this scene. Yeah.
And what did the other Polish soldiers say, or when they saw this, or were you together with any friends of yours when you went to Majdanek, or were you by yourself?
I was by myself, and the Polish ones. So yes, no. Aber I couldn't take it too long.
And David, when you went back to the base and you told your friends or you told the people what you had seen, could they believe you?
So you told me, so I heard, so now I heard, so that's it. But what I saw and what I felt and what I dreamt, this you can never take it away.
You can never erase it. And there was no one in charge. There was no one. You could just walk in and walk out. There was.
Yeah, but it was just it was open everything. You couldn't. Okay.
And you saw. When you went inside. You saw where they had stacked up they had put all the shoes together, all the
the barracks.
the barracks, One place, all the glasses, one place.
It's unbelievable. To see a barrack of female glasses sorted out, men's glasses, shoes, men's shoes, female shoes. It's unbelievable things. How could this happen?
And you saw the canisters of the Zyklone B? You saw the canisters of the Zyklone B? The chemical, the Zyklone B?
Oh yes, you still saw the ovens, and you saw the Cyclone B thing, which was not used yet, didn't have a chance to use it, and it is. What can you say? What can you say? It's hard. It's hard.
So David, you say that when it was 100 kilometers that you had to drive back to Chelm, and you couldn't say a word. You were in silence for.
No.
And then you told us to Shmulik.
Perlmutter.
And afterwards you just both couldn't speak. You couldn't.
No.
There are no words. And I'm sure this must have haunted you forever.
It's haunting forever, and on the other hand, I tried to see if I can forget some of the parts and not to start living over these sceneries. But it stayed with me for a long time.
And did you go to Warsaw? Because part of your unit was sent to liberate Warsaw.
Yeah.
Were you part of that unit that went to Warsaw?
Which unit are you thinking?
The Polish unit, your unit.
To deliver the secret papers.
Or to liberate Warsaw? Did you go back to Warsaw?
Close to Warsaw, but then we came back. But I was there with the papers which I was supposed to deliver, which I did, and came back from Warsaw. And Warsaw was completely destroyed by that time.
And you had heard of the Warsaw Ghetto, of the.
Oh yes.
That must have given you a little bit of pride, knowing that.
Yeah. It did.
You know, David, interestingly, it took the Germans longer to destroy the Warsaw Ghetto than to capture the whole of Poland. It's an amazing fact of
Yes.
that the Yidden with so little, they kept it took the Germans longer to destroy the Warsaw Ghetto than it took them to capture the whole of Poland. It's an amazing, it's actually quite incredible.
That is quite incredible.
But when you heard about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising,
Sure I heard.
and in Chelm, there was also once a Jewish big presence in Chelm. When you went back there, was anything left Jewish-wise, or?
No. there were a lot of people that were in hiding, and they just came back to Chelm and from around Majdanek and so on, and then they started to tell stories of what happened, what
And then your unit was, I mean, it was, you really witnessed history. You being in the Polish, that you volunteered to go into the Polish, you were able to then go and you were asked to liberate parts of Germany.
Yeah.
And from there you went to Dresden.
To Dresden, if you went back, yeah. And
how was it like going now into Germany after you had seen what had happened, and now you go into Germany and you see the perpetrators?
It wasn't a pleasant picture to come and to see the Germans in Dresden and closer the other places. It's not too pleasant.
And then when you went to liberate to Dresden, you heard you heard somebody shout out David, David, and you looked into the eyes of Sam Yachnyuk. He was a Jewish boy who you knew from Saratov.
Right.
Saratov.
I don't think he survived.
That same day you met each other, and the same day, unfortunately, he was killed.
Yeah.
You experienced things that no one could ever imagine or dream. And how long did you stay in Dresden?
Not too long. Not too long.
And David, when you heard on May the 8th that the Germans had surrendered, how was your feeling knowing that this terrible, terrible, terrible war had ended?
The war had ended, and on the other hand, it ended with hope. Perhaps I will meet somebody of the family. It's somehow, somewhere. I don't know how. But here we are free. Where are you planning to go? What are you planning to do? Didn't know. I didn't know. What will be with me?
And David, I'll just mention, because it's very difficult, but when you were a little boy, you wanted a bicycle. I think you asked your parents for a bicycle.
I never got one.
But your brother,
My brother got it, and my father told him, don't send it. He was afraid I'll get injured. I was a very, very delicate boy.
And when you went to your brother in Krakow, you saw your bicycle.
Krakow, and I saw the bicycle.
And then when the armistice was signed, your division was sent to Krakow. You went to Krakow. And immediately you went to, this was your brother Hershey. You went to his apartment.
That's true. I came in, I knocked on the door, and a woman opens, "Yes, can I help you?" I says, "Well, I used to have a brother who used to live here. Well, he's no more here." And that was it. And I saw the bicycle.
You saw the bicycle, your bicycle?
My bicycle, hanging on the wall.
And you saw the furniture inside?
Yeah.
And she didn't let you come in, or?
Nah. It was heartbreaking.
And you never saw Hershey again? And even the pictures were still hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
And your sister Chana she was also in Krakow.
Who's that?
Your sister Chana.
Chana. Yeah, but they were too far apart. Nobody knew where she was, what she was, when.
And did you go back to your town, to Tanapov?
Never did.
You never went back?
No. I never did.
Even after the war? You didn't want to...
I meant after the war. I always had a desire to take a trip, even from here, from Israel, and I never did.
And while you were in Krakow, your sister Bronya returned from Russia to Tanapol. She went to Tanapol and to search for your parents and family, but no one survived. And she wrote to you and she said that her and Sonia, Sarah, they were relocated to Beiton. But her husband Shmuel, he didn't survive either.
No.
But then you got a miracle. You heard a nace that your Bronya got word that your brother Yechiel,
was alive.
He was alive. He was conscripted in the army. So what happened with your brother, with Yechiel? How did he survive?
He was taken to Siberia, with a working battalion. With a working battalion. He was right from the beginning. He was taken to Siberia.
But his wife Salka and their daughter, unfortunately, they didn't survive. It's so sad. It's so.
They say she was such a beautiful woman, with a gorgeous daughter, Ganya, and her name was Sala, and it was all the during the war. He kept a picture in his bosom, my brother, of his wife and daughter, and he thought maybe, and I heard that a few times the Russians the Germans, when we were taking some people away, and that my brother's wife threw herself from the train and thought maybe she threw the daughter and herself, thinking maybe this way she will hiding hiding herself. Maybe she'll survive. And she went back to the to the city, and then was taken away with the next transport. Yeah.
And David, your Max, I don't know if you remember Max, he was from Tarnopol. He had also been in Siberia with Yechiel.
Yes.
And he arrived back and he met Bronya. And unfortunately, he wanted to find his wife and children, but they also died. And Bronya decided to get married.
Bronya, yes. Married Bronya, they came back and they had a son. And then they came to Israel. And he died here in Israel a few years ago.
And then what happened? Where did you decide to go after you were in Krakow?
You're talking about after the war?
After the war.
Well, I went and sat down on a chair, and I was saying to myself, David, here you are. What is it going to be with you? Where are you going to go? And what kind of a life are you going to fashion? And then there was an advertising, and I lived in Germany at that time, and after the war.
Were you in the DP camps?
DP camp, yeah.
Do you remember the name of the DP camp?
Ulm. Ulm and Donau. That's the city. This is where what's his name? Albert Einstein was born in Ulm. Yeah.
And in the DP camps there were other from Yidden you could?
From, I don't think so. But
there were other Yidden.
There were Jews who were thinking what, where, when. And there was an advertising if you're, and I was 20 years old, 21, but I made myself even younger. And I said, well, there was an advertising to have an opportunity to go to Canada. Canada, I have nobody. Canada, I don't know about. I don't know what Canada is. I've never seen Canada, and I made myself a few years younger because that's what they wanted, and I had an opportunity to go to Canada, so I went.
But can I ask, how long did you stay in the DP camp?
For about 2 years.
For 2 years. And what did you do in the camp when you were there?
Oh, what we did, they had classes from art. I took a course of. I was good with hands. A course of saddle saddle making. So I was good with it, and then a little later there was an advertising that if you're below is 20 years old, you have an opportunity maybe to go to Canada.
I think it was Canada allowed that they would take in Jewish orphans.
Yes, and I was one of them. I was one of the orphans.
Can I just ask, David, before, in the DP camp, did they have services for the Chagim, or they give you kosher food in the camps, in the DP camps?
Whether it was kosher, I'm not 100% sure.
But did they have Shabbos services?
But here and there they had a Shabbos service, but not the real thing that we had. The main thing is our aim was to leave Germany, and many people have gone to different countries. Some of them went to Australia, some of them went to England, and I went to Canada.
And was it ever option to come here? It was still under the British to come to Israel. Well, it was British Palestine under the British. Did you ever think of coming to Israel?
Yes and no. I was at that time they still did not have the opening, like when the brecha would come from Israel. They would send some people to see whether to come to Israel, but there was everything was closed.
It was still under the British
Yeah.
rule. There was a mandate, and they had illegal. It was illegal to come.
And that's certainly. And then I had the opportunity to go to Canada, and there I went.
And on the ship, you met your wife.
My wife.
So, David, we will continue, but I just want to thank you, because it is unbelievable that you. I just want to really. No words to thank you. I'm so grateful, David.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
So, David, I'm so grateful to you, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. David, your story and what you wrote in your book and what you've been through is absolutely, there are no words. There just are no words. And I'm so grateful to you that you that we've met, and I know your family in Beit Vegan, but to meet you after reading your book and to hear it firsthand, it is the greatest schut in the world. It is such a schut for me, I cannot tell you.
It's a pleasure.
I just want to ask you, and I think all the listeners would want to ask you, you're wearing a yarmulke. You've seen so much, so many hard things in your life. How did you keep your emunah? How did you keep being frum and becoming a chazan, praying to Hashem? It's unbelievable, because this is the greatest testimony that somebody who has been to Majdanek, who has seen what you've seen, to remain frum, to have emunah, and to choose occupation to be a chazan. How do you explain it, David?
All right. First of all, I grew a family. I grew my son, who is very Orthodox. His children are very, very Orthodox, and it was just a natural thing when I stayed alive, and I built a new home, new wife certainly, and my son and sons, and then we grew grandchildren and great grandchildren, and we were all this generation. I was very, very happy to be Jewish.
And you've got 2 sons and a daughter?
I got 2 sons and a daughter.
And they're all from? They're all...
Yeah, my daughter, unfortunately, died, and from a head injury, and my son and my other son and all the children and great grandchildren, they're all from, all very, very, very from, and very happy, and we are very happy to have this kind of a family.
It really is a courage to survive. And David, I just want to ask you, what message do you give to your grandchildren, to the future generations? What message can you impart?
Well, there were times that I sat down with them, with my grandchildren, great grandchildren, and I was telling them the story of my life, which was not a too happy story, and I was great, and I was happy to part with my knowledge, with my past, whatever I had, to the children, and they grew up to be just wonderful, fine religious children. We're happy to be with them.
And your message to future generations to...
Yes.
That's your message?
Yeah, that's definitely. Definitely. I'm glad to meet you.
David, thank you so much. I am so grateful to you. I cannot tell you. I'm so extremely grateful. You should just admire stream in good health and happiness and nachas from your beautiful family.
Thank you.
And thank you. And a Shana Tova.
How did we get in contact? You and your family.
Your dear son and his family are my neighbors in Beit Vegan. But David, thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
It's my pleasure, and I'm glad to have met you. And I want to wish you a Shana Tova and Kol Tov.
And a Gmach Hasimah Tova. All the very best, David.
All the best.